Hello and welcome back. So what we need is to display how much of this test was taken by the current user. So far we have something that does this. The problem is this only does this once you open the test. So you may have hundreds of tests here and you just want to browse through and see as a student which ones you haven't completed, right? So it would be useful to have that information here. Okay. All right. So what we need to do is just use the functions that we used here. This is the tech test tab. So we used this here. The only problem with this is it requires quite a bunch of information. First, it requires you to know all the questions and the saved answers. So we may not have this luxury all the time that we have this information. Here it's just convenient because we have this information here, okay? But most of the time we are on the wrong page because, for example, we are on this page where we don't have that information. So the only information we have here is we know what test this is, right? And we know the current user. So we have two things, the user ID and the test ID. So we need to be able to use just those two things in order to come up with a percentage right there. So to do this, we will need to change the function, the way this function works. So just not to kill this other one, in case we fail, we just have to make a duplicate like this and try to run it. Let's put a 1 here just to make it different so we don't get an error. Then we can delete this afterwards. So looking at this, what I need is to be able to get these values from somewhere else within the function. So here what I want to give is the test ID and the user ID, okay, like this. So if I have these two, I should be able to get that and that. And once I get these two, then everything else will work because they are relying on these two. So first of all, we need all questions, right? And then we need saved answers as well. And then we need, okay, so we're already going to have the user ID there. That's all good. So how do we get all questions and saved answers? Now we can always check in the tech test because this is where all these are coming from. So all questions is coming from right here. So if you look at this, what I need is just the test ID. So here all I need to do is copy all of this because even what's this? Saved answers is right here. Okay, so let me copy all of this. Get back to functions and just add it here. Okay, so it's questions I don't really need here, so out of my way. So quest is equal to new questions model, all questions query blah blah blah, and that means we have all questions now. Good. What we need now is saved answers. So how did we get that? From tech tests controller. This is saved answers. Where is it? Right here. So we use the user ID and the test ID, right? So good. Let me just copy all of this, copy back to the functions and just paste it here. Just like that. Okay. Now let's make sure we do have the user ID. So user ID we can get from the current user ID right now, right? But we don't want to do things this way because sometimes we may want to know the information from a different user, not the currently logged in user. We want to be able to supply our own user ID. If it's the current user, we're just going to supply this when calling the function. But otherwise, if it's inside a row, maybe the teacher wants to see how much a student has answered in that test. We're not going to use the It won't make sense to use the currently logged in user because that's the teacher. We may want to supply a particular user ID. So in this case, I will copy this and put that here instead. Then the test ID, we'll use that, of course. Okay. That should solve the problem. So back like that. Okay, so given this information, we should now be able to use this in this manner. So I'm going to copy this because currently now we're going to have problems. And let's go back to this. Let me see what I will get here. Yeah, so I get a couple of errors here. These are in the functions.php page. So let's look at 204. That should be a concern. So this one is saying it doesn't know what ID is. Now this is the test ID. So test underscore ID. Yeah, where test ID. So that should solve that one. Now we only have a database problem where the array is being converted to a string. So that's okay because we're just supplying the wrong information in here. We are giving arrays from here. So take test tab view. So this must change. So let's duplicate this just so we can have something to compare with. Now instead of giving it all questions, we have to give it the test ID and then the user ID. So in this case, we want the user ID from the auth. So we'll say get user underscore ID like that. And then what else? All questions, right? No, we want the test ID in this case. So what is the test ID here? That is inside the row, I'm guessing, because these are questions. So that should be row test underscore ID. Let me remove this. And let's save. Let's see if some of these disappear. And they do disappear. Only that the percentage is wrong. So let's see what we have done wrong here. Percentage. Because I know for a fact it's not 0%. So let's come back to functions and see what we have here. Sorry about that. Let's look at the test ID first. Okay. If I refresh, this is the test ID here. So I should be able to see the same thing here. And indeed I do. So the test ID is correct. What about the user ID? I'm sure it is correct as well. But let's just see what we have in there. Guy dude, that's guy right there, so that's correct as well. Okay, so it means we just have a problem with oh yeah, right, all questions, right? So let me remove this all to reflect questions, which is what we are using here. I think that was my mistake. And there we go, we get the right answer, 62.5%. So this is very good now because we can easily use this anywhere. So the first place we want to use it is here, where we have tests there. I am a student, just like I can see take this test, I should be able to see the percentage. So let's go to, let's see here. Tests include, this should be the one. I think this one shows a list of tests. Yeah, so tech, this test is right here. So this one only shows up when, take this test. Yeah. If can take tests. Sure, so that's what we used there. Okay. This one is for if you're a lecturer. Let's see here. What does this do? Ah, right. Okay, so let me just duplicate this. Yes. So I want to see if I put that after answered. I think I should put it before. So I'll edit this one right here instead. And let me put this, let me just put that there for safekeeping. And let me add one more. Let's see, there's active date, and then there's this empty one here. So I'll duplicate the empty one, then before here I'll say answered, or instead of what to do here, because I don't want the lecturer to, actually maybe the lecturer can see this as well. Yeah, I don't think this should be a problem. So let me put answered there, and right here I will put this. We don't need a button, we don't need a link or anything like that. So let me remove all this. I'm just going to say percentage is equal to, and let me put PHP tags. Okay, let's close those tags. Right, so we have percentage here, and instead of an echo, let's do this and put percent. Let's see how that is. Okay, so undefined variable test ID. Okay, that's understood. It should be test row that I should be using, because we have that row here that has a test ID, and then we don't really have a user ID. The user ID in the test row is for the lecturer that prepared this test, but that's not what we want to see. We want to see the percentage taken by the current user. So we'll use auth and get user underscore ID, open close bracket. That will give us the currently loaded, the currently signed up user's ID. So there we go. So answered 62%, 0%. So at least here I can see I haven't answered this one, but I have answered 62% of this one. Just like that. Or 0% taken, just like that. So this is good, because if I go now to my profile and go to tests, I can see how much of that test I have answered. Very good, because we are sharing the same file here, and I can take that test, etc. Now the only button remaining here is to submit this test, because the teacher must know to only mark a test that was submitted and not before. Okay, and by the way, speaking of a few things here, we have to take care of responsive design as well. Look at this table right here. It's getting too big for our situation, right? But this is not a big problem. We have a quick solution for that, and let's go in here. Bootstrap already thought of that. So what we will do, right inside tests inc, where we have the table, so right above the table, let's add a div like this. Okay, opening div. Let's go to the closing table. Let's add a closing div. So I'm just going to duplicate this one right here. Okay, and then in here I just need to add a class of table dash responsive like this. Okay, so that should take care of that problem. If I now refresh, you see that everything is cool. Now there's a scrolling thingy here to scroll inside your table. At least that takes care of the responsive design thingy. So hopefully that helps. What have we done here though? Let's see here. If I go back to tools, responsive design mode. Okay, so that works, but it's doing something. Yeah, it's reducing the size of this thing. That isn't cool at all. So let me try style 100% width. I've never seen this issue before, but let's give it a shot and see. Okay, so 100% width, but let's see if it's still responsive. Yeah, it still is. Okay, actually, instead of putting this style here, maybe what I should have done is add container fluid like this. Okay, let's see that in action. It leaves a little bit of room here because of the padding that comes with container. Let's see if we put P0, which is padding 0. Yeah, that solves the problem. Okay, but let's make sure that we haven't lost our responsive design, and it seems we have not. Okay, let's look at the menu, tests, and yes. So our website is fully responsive as well. Very nice. Okay, so far so good. Now we just need to put a submit test button right here. All right, so I'll see you in the next video.